Welcome to Ali Talks Tech. I'm not Ali Hussein, but I'll bring Ali Hussein shortly so that he can take us through why is he doing Ali Talks Tech. So welcome and be our guest. So Ali, who are you? Who is Ali Hussein?
Ali, Harry, what kind of question is that? You know me for God knows how long.
I do. I actually do know you.
So,
but a lot of the people who are listening to this podcast don't know you. So who is Ali Hussein?
So Harry, let's maybe start a little bit from my personal background. And we'll sort of move into why this podcast and why Ali Talks Tech. I'm a son of one Mr. Hussein Kasim and my late mother, Biasha Ali. We are three boys, 4 girls, but we were a house full. My parents were sort of like the disciplinarians in our ecosystem, you know. We call it ecosystem now, but down at the coast, it's a extended family. So eventually, we were 14 kids in the household.
Wow.
My late mom was a headmistress in a primary school. So anyone ambaye alikuwa hasiki was brought home. We'll send you to Auntie Biasha. We'll send you to Auntie Biasha. So we ended up being 14. So you can imagine vying for attention, one. But two, also the interesting politics as you grow in a household of 14 kids.
So is that why you're always visible? Because you learned to be visible from when you were very young.
Absolutely. And Harry, here's an interesting, probably anecdote that most of us, maybe a few close friends of mine would notice, but I grew up with a major stutter. But I learned to overcome it.
Wow.
In fact, there are certain words like S that were really, really tough growing up in school. You know, I used to dread being pointed out to actually read something in class, but I overcome it. And I don't know about speech therapy because I never went to speech therapy, but somehow, I learned how to, there are certain moods of mine. For example, when I'm super angry, when I'm excited. So I learned to, hey, Ali, slow down.
Okay.
Take it easy. And
okay.
Over the years, I learned to actually not overcome it because it's still there at some point, but to sort of control it. Went to school down at the coast, Aga Khan from nursery to high school. Then went to Lenana for my A-levels. I think our year probably the last or second last to do the A-levels, then 844 checked in. Went to school here, university, KU.
Before you went to school, you went to NYS, right?
NYS. Hey, Harry, how can we forget that? I think those years of those 3 months of NYS sort of those friendships that we built over that 3 months are lifelong friendships. And it sort of defined in quite a bit who we are from a discipline perspective, from a perspective of resilience, because man, that was not easy.
Maybe for the sake of people who may not know what NYS is.
National Youth
Yeah.
Service.
Yes.
During our time, it was during the Moi era. And if you lived in our time during the Moi era, that was the one-party system. They called it democracy, but it was one party. It was KANU, Baba na Mama. You know, Kenya African National Union. Those guys used to say KANU will live forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you remember our generation, in school we used to be forced to sing KANU, KANU, yajenga nchi. You know, I'm like thinking back to those days. You know, the indoctrination. So what Moi did during that time, before we went into uni, there was a lot of agitation in universities in Kenya for political change, for wherever, you know. So Moi came up with this genius idea, in quotes, that university students first must go through NYS before they joined uni to get indoctrinated how to be good citizens. So
Was it indoctrination, or was it really to? The objective was basically to have a disciplined university community.
okay, Harry, let's just say it as it is. You know, it was indoctrination.
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
Because you went there. During our time, we spent, I think, a semester before we went to NYS. There was an overlap, I think. So we spent a semester in uni, and then we were told, before you come back, you have to spend 3 months in. And I recall the whole process, you know, the process of coming in to NYS, how you were received, how you were allocated the barracks, how the so-called afandes or company commandants used to treat us. Waking up at between 2 to 3 in the morning, right? You do what they used to call piti, physical training. You then were, after piti, you were sent for breakfast standing. The thing that stuck in my mind, still sticks to my mind, is why the tea was either super cold or super hot. And you were given like 3 minutes to drink that tea. And the thing that stuck in my mind was this guy always telling us, chai haina mfupa. Chai haina mfupa. You drink that shit and you get out. And one piece of bread. And then you go into parade. You know these boots, Harry, your boots. You recall how when we were given those boots, they were like crude.
They had scales.
Scales.
Yeah, they
kabisa.
had scales. Yeah.
And you needed to prepare them. And every morning, you were going into parade. And the family used to tell us, your boot, hiyo ndio kio yako. You must shine it until you see your face on that boot. And we were like, how is this thing going to happen? My friend, before 1 week was over, we used to do that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, on one hand, yeah, it was good discipline. But on the other hand, it was really indoctrination.
Okay.
So I recall I think it was 3 times a week when we had political class under trees. Guess what? That was the time to sleep. You learned how to sleep with your eyes open.
Yeah, it was something else.
It was
yeah, it was
something
something.
else,
Okay,
but-
so after after NYS,
Very nice.
university.
Went back to uni. We finished uni. Started working for my dad and doing some entrepreneurial work. So you must understand that I come from a line of entrepreneurs.
Okay.
My grandfather from Wasini Island, famous today for Kisite Mpunguti Marine National Park. My grandfather in the early 1900s used to ply dhows between Pemba, Zanzibar, Wasini, Mombasa, Lamu.
Okay.
So he had a number of dhows. And those days, it was on a smaller scale, is what you call the robber baron years of pre-independence and early independence, where there was, you were trading, period. When independence came, you were smuggling. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there were no borders, there were, guys were just trading. So my grandfather's dhows were confiscated by the powers that be because he was
no.
exactly
Okay.
all right. Then he started working for the Ramisi Sugar Factory. My grandfather was, for all intents and purposes, from Western perspective, was illiterate. But from a Islamic perspective, he was highly educated person. Did you know, by the way, that you could write, and my dad still can, write Swahili with Arabic script?
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, after independence, the British, before independence, when the British were ruling what they call the East African Protectorate, in their genius, they decided that Kiswahili must only be written in Latin script. So all of a sudden, people that were highly educated
Became illiterate.
became illiterate.
That's really not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then my granddad worked for the Ramisi Sugar Factory as a principal personnel officer. He was responsible for recruiting workers for the Ramisi Sugar Factory, and then he had a side hustle. So side hustles didn't start now. A long time ago. He had a side hustle where he also used to do timber milling for the factory. And my dad picked up from there. So my dad started a sawmill down in Kilifi. So all the way from Wasini, which was Kwale, at that time Kwale. My dad and my mom, when they got married, my mom was a teacher, and my dad was an entrepreneur.
Teacher disciplinarian.
Completely, man. Wow.
Yeah.
Those stories, a story for another day. But so my dad did this timber trading. Initially, he worked for the Kenya Ports Authority, then used to be called
Can't remember.
Cargo Handling.
Oh yeah.
Kenya Cargo Handling Service.
Yes. As part of the East Africa community.
As part of the East African community.
Yeah. The first one.
The first one.
Yeah.
So my dad did all this stuff and then had this idea to start a sawmill in Kilifi. And he walked into the Kenya Industrial Estates, KIE. So for young guys today, just remember, this country had what, by all intents and purposes, was a sovereign fund called the Kenya Industrial Estates. And the Kenya Industrial Estate was part of what was known then as the Africanization of commerce or Kenyanization of commerce in the country.
So before we move,
Yes.
what's a sovereign? What's a sovereign fund?
A sovereign fund is a fund in its simplest form, a fund that is created by a government, to basically fund enterprises. And mostly these enterprises are for the people of that country. Okay? So call it a government-led VC. you
Okay.
know, for people.
How is that
who are-
different? How is that different from the youth fund, the women fund, the other fund?
KIE used to work then.
Okay.
It used to work, really used to work. Today, my humble opinion about all these funds, they're all political.
Okay.
They're set up for political mileage and not really focused on the people that they're supposed to serve. KIE worked.
Okay.
For a number of decades, KIE actually worked. So my dad had this idea, walked into a Kenya Industrial Estates office and sat down with the officer in charge at that time in Mombasa and told him, this is my idea. Harry, you won't believe this. But the guy was so excited because there weren't enough ideas to fund. There weren't enough funds, business people coming in to fund, for them to fund. I said, you have a business plan? I said, no, this is my idea. They sat down and crafted the business plan with the KE officer. Fast forward to a year later, his first loan was approved and the sawmilling equipment was being imported from Germany. I still remember the brand, Steiner. And super excited, the whole family is excited, waiting for the bills of lading have been sent and stuff. Guess what? The ship that is bringing the sawmill sank.
Oh no.
If you're talking about being resilient as an entrepreneur, the ship sank. So my dad's older brother, God bless his soul, we used to call him Ami Muhammad. Ami is basically your
Uncle.
father's brother.
Yeah.
Uncle. So Ami tells us later, Muhammad tells us later, he's narrating now, after the sawmill has been set up and successful and stuff like that. I said, when your dad came and told us the ship sank, I just knew here, he's in his story too. These are just stories,
How can that ship that
yes,
very
that
ship
very ship,
that has your equipment
yes,
sink?
sink. Of all things. But thank God for a small little thing that you probably learned if you did commerce in school during those days in high school. CIF. You know what that stands for?
Tell us.
Courage, insurance, and fright. So when you are bringing stuff from abroad, you are importing. Are you importing CIF? Are you importing just free on board?
Free on board, yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah. FOB, CIF.
CIF. So my dad had, for some reason, I think KIE insisted on CIF. So the stuff was insured. They were fully reimbursed and they started the process of importing again.
Okay, so stop there. So guys, when you're importing things, CIF, not FOB. FOB is cheaper, CIF is safer. Okay? All right, Ali.
If you do FOB, utajua vitu kwa ground ni nini. So the sawmilling plant came in, it was set up, and those days, the cooperation between governments was amazing. Steiner brought in an engineer, and that engineer spent 3 months with us at home. I still remember that guy's name, Engineer Zeng. He helped us set up the plant, and up until the first planks of wood were being were actually coming out of the sawmill and were being sold. That's when Zeng said, "Guys, it's time for me to go back to Germany."
Nice.
Harry, a small little anecdote for us, for myself and my brothers, Tahir and Kasim. We got our entrepreneurial, genes and sort of experience helping my dad. Friday after school, we took a bus. Those days, Malindi bus or Tana River, from Mombasa to Mtondia, which is a small village 6 kilometers from Kilifi town. Friday evening, we were at the sawmill, helping our dad, supervise, do all sorts of stuff that a sawmill required. Sunday, at about 4 o'clock, we head back to Mombasa for school.
Okay.
So that's a bit of my history, Harry.
Okay. Quite interesting, actually. Quite interesting. And coming from that entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial background, I guess, prepared you to be who you are now. And I now move to say, what is this? I always see you post this thing about being, in the intersection between marketing and tech. Tell us about that.
So, after uni, I went to KU. I did a BA in business studies. Now, those days, I finished uni in 90. So from 87, 85, 86, I was in Ladana A levels. 87, I went to uni. So I took a course called business studies. Now, myself and one of my very good friends, the late Wanaina Ndirango, took a small course within business studies, typewriting. Secretarial studies. Now, what was interesting about that, because our business studies course finance, marketing, but we needed to fill a small component to complete our business studies course. So we did secretarial studies. Now, I was really fascinated by marketing and accounting. But at KU, I was introduced through secretarial studies to computers. But first, you had these IBM typewriters. You needed to learn how to do fast typing.
You had to put your fingers in a certain...
Up to today, I can do fast typing.
Okay.
So, once a week, we were given access to the computer lab. I don't know why they call it a computer lab, but this thing was the size of this room. This mainframe computer was the size of this room. And then they had these dummy
terminals.
And then everything you did, you needed to save in a floppy disk, this size. Forget about those floppy disks that started this size. Those days, floppy disks was this size, and they were floppy, literally floppy. So that got me.
Actually, they used to call them punch cards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, there were punch cards, and then there were floppy.
Okay.
There were those big floppy disks.
Okay.
And then they became smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
So that got me, into this. At that time, I didn't know where it was leading, but reflecting on what Steve Jobs said, his famous statement around connecting the dots. So I got my first introduction to computers back in 87, 90 at KU. Then went back to working for my dad for a couple of years, and then my dad told me, you know what, I think you need to sort of try and spread your wings, So I found myself in Nairobi, worked at a small advertising agency called Pegasus Communications, my first job in Nairobi. With Pegasus Communications, I was then poached by one of our clients, Hyundai Motors. I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing that properly. Some people say Hyundai, some people say Hyundai. So, and forgive me for
Tomato,
for
tomato.
for sort of massacring the name. So, I got poached by the executive director then. I still remember his name, Mr. Kamali. He liked my interactions, and I got into Hyundai as a marketing executive, and then within 3 months, I got poached by London Motors. My boss at Hyundai moved to London Motors. 3 months later, he calls me, and I joined Hyundai. I joined Toyota as a market analyst. So my love affair with tech and marketing began then. Fast forward, I was among the first employees of Three Mice Interactive Media, founded by Paul Kukubo, Ken Joroge of Cellulant, and Betty Moniki Kukubo, Paul's wife. So then you have marketing and you have tech. So that digital marketing, building websites, slowly evolving into, automation, marketing, email marketing, and stuff like that. So that intersection of tech and marketing. Today, marketing is all about data, and data is really driven by tech.
Yeah, it's interesting how this evolution has gone. From those days, who thought actually tech would be so big in marketing? To have big companies like IBM, Oracle, all having like products that are geared towards marketing. So
actually, what's interesting is that my last check a couple of months ago is that the top 5 digital agencies are either from a tech background or from a consulting background. So Deloitte Digital, even PwC has a digital arm. Of course, Accenture, IBM Interactive. And then what you've also found is that lots of the so-called traditional marketing services agencies have had to acquire digital agencies, and in some cases had to acquire really data-driven agencies like Sapient Nitro, like Wonderman, which incidentally I ran in East Africa for about 3 years. Yeah.
Interesting. So tell me, Ali. When you mentioned the name Ali Hussein, people have very different, feelings about it. These love and hate in equal measure when you mention that name. What happens, and how do you feel about it?
I feel fine, Harry. I feel absolutely fine. I'm an equal opportunity offender, and I think a lot of my friends and a lot of my associates have heard me talk about this for a long time. I don't mean to offend. I don't come out deliberately and say, that's wrong. I may come across as abrasive. The one thing I know is that I don't know everything. But the one thing I am clear about, Harry, is that I call out bullshit as it is. I have absolutely zero chills about that. And guess what, Harry? I'm not always right. And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to say, hey, dude, I think I was wrong there. But when it comes to matters that affect the industries that I work in, when it comes to policy matters that I'm really passionate about, I call it as it is, man. Call it as it is.
Do you feel misunderstood sometimes?
No. I think I really feel that people know me. I just feel that some people think I'm too abrasive. Some people think I speak too open truth to power. Some people think I should tone down. But, Harry, our African culture sometimes sort of pulls us back a little bit because you feel, that's my elder, so I shouldn't contradict him. And I say to people and I say to young people, feel nothing about contradicting your elders. Just do it respectfully. Don't abuse people. Don't call people names, but say it as it is. So I have found myself disagreeing with public figures, cabinet secretaries, senior people in the regulatory, space. But I stand by what I say. And maybe sometimes as you grow, you realize some of the things you could have said maybe a little bit better diplomatically. But hey, Harry, diplomacy, 100% diplomacy never got us anywhere. So you've got to ting it sometimes with a bit of, harsh truth.
Okay. No, I've seen the harsh truth. You spew out.
I spew out, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. You're right. Sometimes we need to, especially when we become senior citizens, we need to be telling these things and calling things out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want us to change gears a bit and look at something that you've really invested in, and that's the fintech space. What pulled you into the fintech space?
Harry, I'll tell you something that probably most people would not believe when I told them this, when I say this. But I did not wake up one morning and tell myself I'm going to be a fintech guru. In my evolution in my career, straddling tech and marketing, I realized that the financial services space, and with all due respect to my banker friends, was for a long time living in the dark ages. And personal experiences, and I think quite a number of my compatriots will tell you similar stories. My first salary, working for a jobs board then called Jobs for Africa. Our offices were at Barclays Plaza on Loiter Street.
So that must be when it was spunky new and shiny.
Absolutely. Even Grand Regency then was just up and running, so we were neighbors. I remember my salary was about 35K, and I had a Barclays bank account. Today, cards are, everybody has an M-Pesa account. Those days, having a debit card, my friend, was a was a social symbol, status symbol. Yeah. So I get my salary has already been deposited into my bank account. I walk into this Barclays, my branch, next to my office at Barclays Plaza. And the branch manager is like, I think ATMs weren't even, they were there, but they were few and far between. So you had to walk into the branch. And you walked into a branch you had to walk into your branch. I mean, today we take financial technology for granted. Those days, you could not get money from another branch. You had to go to your branch. So I walked to my branch to withdraw some money so I can go and pay rent. I mean, there was no M-Pesa, you couldn't, my bank account did not qualify me for a checkbook, just a debit card. So the branch manager tells me, the teller tells me, sorry, your bank account, wait for it, has been moved to River Road. I'm like, WTF? What do you mean? My bank account has been moved to River Road. It tells me you did not meet the threshold of 50K to be in this branch.
In your balance.
In my balance.
Yes.
You had to have a perpetual balance of 50K to be at Barclays Plaza branch. I mean,
Did you close your account?
of course I closed my account. But I had to go first
To River Road.
to River Road. So I went to River Road. And I proceeded to remove all my money from that branch. And guess where I opened my account next? Equity. Nikakuwa a member.
You became a member.
I became a member. So my angst with the way I was treated by my bank started my journey towards how can we make this so-called financial inclusion. So my sort of activism started. And then of course
So basically now what I'm seeing is it sort of shifted from being in the intersection of tech and marketing to tech and finance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So what then brought me here to today is figuring out what's going on and following up and speaking my mind. And then of course it was amplified by social media. So then my speaking the truth and my abrasiveness moved online. And the rest, as I say,
It's history.
is history.
Okay.
So I specifically chose LinkedIn as a platform because I felt LinkedIn spoke to me from a professional perspective. I did not want to throw mud per se as, what Twitterati usually do, and, Facebook all over the place with, relationships. It's complicated kind of conversations,
Yes.
So I focused on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn has this way of pulling your conversations and literally creating gurus out of, So I found myself more and more deeply engaged in the financial services, even before it was called fintech, and slowly but surely, here we are today.
Talking of LinkedIn, I think I remember. I think it was your daughter who said you are a LinkedIn socialite.
So I corrected them, Harry. I corrected them. I jokingly said, celebs and influencers you can find on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Key opinion leaders, please, can I repeat myself? Key opinion leaders are found on LinkedIn.
Okay.
As my Kikuyu friends would say, Tuihamwe, are we together?
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, now you're the chair of the Association of Fintechs of Kenya.
Yes.
You're also an executive board member of the Africa FinTech Network.
Correct.
How, do these organizations actually add value to the ecosystem? Because you see, a lot of the time, when you speak to, I speak to a lot of people, you know that, and a lot of the time, people feel like these organizations are basically gatekeepers to, making sure that it's only their friends who pass and others to remain behind. What's your feeling about this? Do they
So-
add value?
So, Harry, let me just say this. We're not politicians. Okay? We are not gatekeepers. We are not rent seekers. Okay? There's a reason why we have more than 100 members today of the Association of Fintechs in Kenya. And it's still a very nascent association. The idea around creating this association, myself and a number of co-founders of the association, is to create a platform where fintechs in this country and across Africa, because now I'm including the Africa FinTech Network, will have a voice. For a long time, by the way, did you know that the term bank and the term finance is reserved for certain organizations that are regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya, which is fine. However, in 2022, financial services is an ecosystem. It's not just banks. It's circles, it's fintechs, it's microfinance organizations. And we have a situation where we have a legal lacuna where fintechs are nowhere in the policy conversations in this country. Now, what needs to happen is that policy regulation needs to come after policy. Now, I'm not saying that everything needs to be regulated. I'm saying that this country and this continent needs to recognize the role that other non-bank organizations are playing in the financial services space. And I like to give this analogy, Harry, and I like to repeat it until it is drilled down into everybody who must have a say in the industries that they play in this country and in this continent. If you walk into a restaurant, you have three options. Okay? Number one, you're serving the food to the clients who are walking into the restaurant. Number two, you have a seat at the table and you're looking at the menu and you're ordering from the waiters. Number three, you're on the menu being eaten. Now, for a long time, entrepreneurs, not just fintech, I'm talking about, and not just tech entrepreneurs, I'm talking about every small business player in this country and in this continent. They have almost zero say in the policies enacted for their benefit. So what we are saying as associations is that we must have a seat at the table. Because if you don't have a seat at the table, you're either serving food, which is fine, at least you get some anecdotes of what's going on and you can act on them. But if you're on the menu, my friend, you're being eaten and you don't even know you're on the menu. So these associations, yes, we founded, but eventually now we want to make sure that we are engaging with our members. We are also engaging with policymakers and regulators. Sometimes, honestly, I feel that we are a bit harsh on regulators because they have no framework on which to work on. So I give you, for example, the situation on open banking across the continent. And open banking, simply from a layman's perspective, is the ability of the common Joe, the Mwananchi, than 10 to be able to interact with his or her money or his or her bank account or his or her wallet the way he or she feels like. And that will only happen if the financial services ecosystems are completely integrated. Integration of these financial services ecosystem is about data. Now, we already have a great framework to ensure that open banking works, and that framework is data protection and privacy. Because I first want to make sure that my data is safe before it can be moving from Barclays to Equity to
Before you can travel.
to Cellulant to M-Pesa and stuff like that. Now, this country already has a de facto open banking regime. The fact that you are able to interact with your M-Pesa account and your bank account, send money between your bank account to M-Pesa and other mobile money accounts, the fact that you can have a mobile wallet from Cellulant or Flutterwave or whoever else is in the space is a good beginning. But for it to grow, it must be cemented from policy at policy level. And that's the conversations that the Association of Fintechs and the Africa Fintech Network across Africa needs to be having with governments across the continent.
Okay. So I'm sure you'll talk about this in your future podcasts and how people can engage and be part of those associations and to decipher and also demystify some of the thoughts that people have. Now, Ali Talks Tech.
Yes.
What inspired you? What should people look forward to? Why do it? There are like 1,000 podcasts there.
Let me start by telling an African parable. The day the lion tells his story, the hunter and the lion story becomes a different conversation. And I think also I liked what the governor of the central bank said the other day in relation to Stella and Mwamburi. Do you remember what he said? He said, until Stella gets to tell her story, Mwamburi will continue to act the victim.
Yes.
So it's about telling our story, Harry. It's about telling the Pan-African tech story. From the beginning, from the days of Dr. Bitange Ndemo and Paul Kukubo and the CS then, please remind me his name. Pogishu and Mutai Kagwe. From the days of laying the first undersea cable in Mombasa to today, we are talking about NOFBI. That's the fiber optic ecosystem that the government has built across the country, to the time today when Liquid, they've just rebranded, Liquid Intelligent Technologies are laying fiber across the continent, to the conversations we're having today about tech funding across Africa. We must tell our stories. That's my story as a player in the ecosystem. What I have seen since I started the journey in the Kenyan and Pan-African tech ecosystem back in the late 90s to today. Harry, you and I have walked this journey to today, and I think we're always told about how telling stories is one of the most important things. Let's tell our stories. Let not, and this is no disrespect to international media, the CNNs, the Al Jazeeras, the BBCs. let us tell our stories, Harry. And what better way to tell our stories but going to the players who have been, who are, and who will be. So I'm not just gonna be talking about Ali. I'm just providing a platform for conversations with the likes of Dr. Nemo, conversations with Harry. By the way, you're my guest soon. Conversations with the likes of Ken Joroge, conversations with the likes of the founders of Flutterwave, the founders of WapiPay, across the board, Harry. We must tell our stories literally from the horse's mouth. Hence why the inspiration for Ali Talks Tech.
That's a big one, and I think very noble, very useful, needed. I think you're right. I always repeat the same things that you said.
Yes, you do.
We never tell our stories. We don't know how to tell our stories, or we refuse to tell our stories, and let other people tell our stories.
Absolutely.
And, if somebody else will tell our story, then you know how it goes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to this podcast. I'm really excited about your podcast, and I'll be tuned in, man. Just say know that if anybody else doesn't listen, I will.
Harry, I am super excited, and really, I want to thank you personally for starting off my podcast. I thought I'll do this a little bit differently. Instead of me just talking about me, I thought I'll ask someone with your experience in tech publishing to introduce me, introduce the podcast, and should we also call it a video cast? I'm not sure.
It's called a vodcast.
A vodcast.
Yes.
So that we kick this off, in the right way. I want to tell my listeners and viewers that we'll be having these podcasts and vodcasts every 2 weeks initially, and expect some
Fire?
interesting conversations.
Fire?
Expect some fires. Expect some controversy. Expect the fact that I will not always be right. But when I'm wrong, I hope that my viewers and my guests will correct me. And I am obliged to accept the correction. I'm obliged to say, you know what, I'll stick to my guns, so be it. Yes.
So basically, we should just expect Ali.
Just expect me. Bottom line, just expect me. Yeah?
All right. Thank you so much, Ali. It's been fun talking to you, and I'm really wishing you well in your new journey. But as I said, looking forward to all the content, the lined up guests, looking really good. So all the best, and let's tell our stories.
Let's tell our stories, Harry. Thank you so much. And I just want to end that the first 3 episodes, of course, this is the first episode, but expect some super interesting guests in the next 2 episodes. And then as we move along, we will be telling our stories. One of my very good friends challenged me, because I had lined up a number of guests, and she told me, where are the women? And I'm like, you know what? I do not ever want to be accused of, what do they call them? Manels. Yes. So I assured her that there'll be lots of women in this conversation. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you. There you have it. Be ready for Ali. Expect Ali. That's what I can say.